there in Psalm 19, verse 7. Did y'all notice the airplane reference? Yeah, I'm still mad. Sunday night, we had a chance to end the season on a tie. I'm talking about football now. And both teams that'll never happen again. We could set this up, but, we just had a chance to do an airplane play there with the words. And so that was pretty cool. But look at Psalm 19, verse 7. It says here, the law of the Lord is perfect, converting the soul. The testimony of the Lord is pure, making wise the simple. And that's our goal right there, is to make wise the simple. The interesting thing is, and I'm not making fun of anybody, when we're younger and even teens, we are simple. It doesn't matter how much I think back to what I knew as a 17 and 18-year-old, and I've checked this with other people. It's just there's still, even though you know facts, there's still a bit of being naive, and that's perfectly okay, and being simple, and that's not something that we should shy away from. So today I want to speak to you on this: making wise the simple, or how I goofed up and how you can avoid the same. If you want that to be the title for you, the key word today, even with Sunday school and this, is the word influence. We're open at our church. I don't mind talking about my shortcomings. And without going into private details, things of that nature, I want to make sure that I'm going to make fun of social media here in a minute. But there is one positive I see about it, is that it shows us that some of our thoughts, some of our processes can be more normal than we thought. And so as I go through stages in life and through I don't mind talking about them, because I think what people do is they get embarrassed by things going on, problems that they don't talk about them. So then everybody else has to face the same thing over and over again. And I don't think we should do that. Now, of course, I'm not talking about giving details and personal information or violating anybody's privacy. So I want to be clear as I give this sermon today. Not one syllable is aimed at anyone in this room. However, there is one line that's aimed at me. And because I violated exactly what I'm going to be talking to you about, years ago. Violated. That sounds horrible, doesn't it? I'll get to it. But our goal in child rearing is to capture the heart of the child. In their role, they're going to have a parent. They're going to have teachers. Your kids will more than likely have a pastor. No guarantee you'll be here forever. Youth director, friends. The question becomes, are they all on the same page? We know our kids are going to grow up, but then the question is, are we prepared for it? Our kids should not learn, and I've said this all throughout the time, our kids should not learn how to interact with others from kids, but they should learn how to interact from others by us. So it's my goal we should make our homes happy, fun places. I would rather that it was my home that everybody wanted to be at. That's not always the case, but that's what we've always strived for. And, now then, there's, some more back and forth than there used to be. And because some of the other parents want, now kids at their house too. And so, we try not to monopolize too much. But home cannot be a happy place when there's yelling and screaming. And so the sermon won't be about that, but, aim for a happy home. When I get through this portion that I'm about, I had a long Bible story to illustrate the point. I don't need it to illustrate the point, but if you get mad at me because there's a lack of scripture on this, it's because I'm cutting about 10 minutes out of the sermon to get us a little bit sooner. So just go ahead and read the story about Jehoshaphat and all those people, and we'll back it up. 1 Kings chapter 15, look at verse 26 here. And he did evil in the sight of the Lord and walked in the way of his father, and in his sin wherewith he made Israel to sin. Notice there, walked in the way of his father. See, sin, tendencies, and attitudes tend to be passed. However, they are not always passed. It's not always the case. And I'll illustrate some of that. We all have friends. And cliques, by the way, are not always bad. I don't mind having, and by the way, this church with our size, all of our teenagers should be the clique, by the way. There shouldn't be anybody ever excluded. But I don't mind a clique based on right and wrong. Not cool or not cool or, something of that nature, but a clique based on, if somebody's being a fool and doing foolish things, then, bring them into a certain spot, but distance is still there. See, separation is commanded. 2 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 17. Wherefore come out from among them and be ye separate, saith the Lord, and touch not the unclean thing, and I will receive you. Sick plus well, and we've learned this over the last couple of years, equals 2 people sick. Dirty plus clean equals 2 dirties. Maybe somebody has less filth on them. But Proverbs chapter 22, verse 24, make no friendship with an angry man, and with a furious man thou shalt not go, lest thou learn his ways and get a snare to thy soul. See, God wants us to control our influences. I used an illustration early on in our church. I don't know if it was weird, but I didn't ever use it again, so I'll just tell you what it was. How about that? Ecclesiastes talks about the threefold cord. And if one prevail against him, 2 shall withstand him, and a threefold cord is not quickly broken. And what we did is we had a kid here. He was a teenager. And we had, I had brought these 4 or 5 ropes into church, and we lassoed them. And 3 of us were going that direction, 1 that way. And, we were, and I was illustrating the influence that we can have on people. And with that, just because there are 3 influences over there and 1 over there doesn't mean that 1 can't pull. I've learned that through the years, is that 1 can pull away from the other 3. And so the illustration's a tad flawed, but if we have on one side, we have the parent, we have the pastor, we have the teacher, we have, friends, everybody pulling in the same direction, family pulling in the same direction, there's a better chance, I think, for the kids to turn out right. And I hope you're not sitting there thinking, the Gillespies have turned out decent kids and good kids. And so don't sit there and think that I'm, referring to mine or anybody else. I've learned something. I want to pass it on to you. But I think one of the worst things we can do is to badmouth authority to our children. Now, I think you probably consider me somewhat of an authority. I have no authority in your home or anything of that nature, nor should I, nor do I want it. But if we bash authorities, police officers, or if on the way home you have roasted preacher, in front of your kids, I don't think that's a smart thing to do. One thing is your kids might need me one day as their pastor. Now, going along with that, that's also an area where I think I've goofed up. I don't know if you're worried about that. Nothing sinful. But I will never speak against you to your kids. And in my 18 years of pastoring, as far as I know, I never have done it. No matter what the disagreement is, part of that is I've probably not talked to your kids all that much. But if we're going in the same direction, it's hard to fight. But we allow people who aren't going in the same direction to influence us, and that's when the problem starts. So I want to show you where I goofed up. Are you ready? Remember when a couple weeks ago I said there's a couple parents, and I used Pastor Chris, Pastor Matt as examples because they're better at just hounding their kids than I do. The way I work, and this is where I goofed up, is that I figure if I say something once, that's enough, and people will listen and follow. And I say people, I'm including kids, including whoever the case is. And that's not always the case. And so I've realized that, and I hear Pastor Matt talking to his kids. I hear Pastor Chris talking, and some of you probably do that, and you spend more time in repetition than I do. And so I think that's an area I've goofed up. But it goes further than that. So I don't know if you remember, and sometimes when I give an illustration, I think, I just gave that illustration. People are going to be rolling their eyes. But then I look back, and the last time I gave this illustration was 2009, 12 years ago. And I don't know if you have anything like that, but I think of 2009, that was yesterday. Do you realize that 2009 was 13 years ago now? Holy cow, that just seems unbelievable. So I've used the illustration before, and I'm going to tell you how I've given it. I've used this side of the platform to talk about foolishness. I've used this side of the illustration to talk about wisdom, and then I use the middle to talk about the simple ones. And so I was going to have people stand up, and I'm like, man, that's a lot of people to have standing up here. So I actually just made signs for you so we can keep it straight. So over here, how unprofessional, wise. Over here, fool. So now we can keep that straight of what that is. Now I was going to put this on the middle, but I want to put this on my pulpit. So, then I was looking during Sunday school, where do I put it? Now there's this here. So can I do that? Simple. So when we talk about these three, I need you to keep those straight for there. So now, we don't need to, do we need to come up here and define what a fool is? I don't think so. I don't think we need to define somebody who's wise. We know it. We see it. And the simple, though, I will define and use a simple piece of paper to do this. Simple is like an unwritten on piece of paper. It's uncrinkled, no creases, no writing. It's simple and it's there for the writing. Now, it's been written on. Of course, there's been a process to get us there. When we're talking about people, this is kind of a hard thing to have. But at the same time, just simple is just simple. Now, here is exactly where I don't want to brag on myself, but I tend to think that I'm over on this side. If you want to argue, you probably wouldn't come to the church if I was on that side. Probably, I don't know, unless you're a fool yourself. And then, maybe you enjoy that in your pastor. I don't know. But there were things in my life early on that I learned from and watched and said, you know what? I don't want to be over there. I didn't have a lot of prudent guides when I was growing up. I learned from when I say this, my mom, I'm not talking about my mom, I'm not talking about that. But I got a lot of chance to watch this and said, you know what? I don't want that. And I found my way over here. I basically, except for rent and things of that nature, raised myself from middle school on. My own dishes, my own everything. And which I'm not disparaging my mom, single mom trying her best, but had to be out working and she would sometimes have jobs that would take her away for a week. And I didn't want her to come home and then all of a sudden decide I had to stay at somebody else's house. Right? I wanted to be alone. And and the choices that she would have given me on places to stay would have been horrible as well. So I made sure that I stayed over here, and it could be that I didn't clean up the house until 20 minutes before she got there. But, it's when she gets back home, I'm going to have everything set up and ready to go. So I didn't have one of these over here, and that's a prudent guide. But you know what? I was about to say I didn't have any, but I did because I sought them out. My wrestling coach was one of these. My brother was one of these. There was a bunch of people. My mom was one of these. These prudent guides. Eric Clark was one of these. And so prudent guide is somebody who stands over here in wisdom and tries to get the simple over, making wise the simple. Like we said in verse 7 there. Making wise the simple. The prudent guide, that's their role. And so when somebody's talking more, Chris is better at this than I am. Pastor Matt's better at this than I am. Many of you are better than this because I tend to stand over here and say, well, I said it once. What are you waiting for? Because that's how I was younger, and I expect other people to be that way, and it's just not reality. So we have a prudent guide over here. Who wants to stand over here and hold the prudent guide? Come on up, Nathan. Why is it always you? So the prudent guide is over here, right? We know who the prudent guide is. Is he taking up the whole screen over here? I suppose you got that goofy grin on your face, yeah? All right, so now here's another thing that I've taught. And that over here you have the scorner. And the scorner's job, he's a fool who's trying to pull the simple over into foolishness. This would be, and notice I think it's Psalm 1, yes. Blessed is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor standeth in the way of sinners, nor sitteth in the seat of the scornful. See, the scorner, let's define this, open contempt and disdain. And here is the crux of my faux pas. Faux pas is French for where I goofed up. So the scorner, I always assumed was over here in foolishness. I didn't put any tape on this one. Does anyone want to say it? No. Just understand that there's a scorner over here, shall we? Actually, let's do this. Scorner. Here's what I didn't realize. And here is my biggest mistake, is I didn't understand that there are scorners over here too. They believe a lot like I do. But they're scorners. And this is where I goofed up. See, our church, my style, I track people with character. You look around here in the building and you see a bunch of people with character. You don't need a big old hoorah session. You don't need to come in here. You know, on Wednesday nights, we open our Bible and there is no hoorah on Wednesday nights. There is zero hoorah. But yet people still show up because, we're going to open our Bible and we're going to learn. It's the same thing I did as a teenager. I drove my car after practice and I got to Bible study. I was at Bible study even at, First Baptist Church Eugene when I was over there. But here it is. I assumed incorrectly that scorners were only fools trying to drag the simple into foolishness. But there are wise scorners and whisperers that you might see around, and I didn't catch that this whole time, not this whole time, that this was going on from people over here. Interesting. You can go back to black screen if you would. So, through the years, I've allowed wise scorners access to my kids because they believed like I did. I thought that although there were disagreements, these people would have enough discernment not to sow doubt in those around them. Imagine me coming to your kids and talking about something I disagree with about you. It's kind of funny. Jarrett, we go soul winning. How much conversation do we have back and forth going soul winning? There's none. Because you know what? If I were to have to unload on the things I disagree with on your parents, so I just keep my mouth shut. No, because what do we talk about? Okay, so hey, we're going to go soul winning. And if you're going to ride with me in a car, you just have to be okay with me not talking much. But I got to change that. Imagine my going to your wife and exclaiming my disagreement with you. I did this once in 18 years. I was rightfully called out for it. I was rightfully chewed out, and I was 100% wrong. But that did happen once, and that's what the goof up I was talking about earlier. But scorning happened. It seemed innocent enough. We're asking questions of people about music. We're asking questions to people about dress. Then things all of a sudden get into doctrine. Things get into Bible. The whole time whispering to people around them. But the funny thing, it never was to me. Do you feel like you know what? I didn't use you much, did I? But I can do the same thing over here. Do you want to just sit here because I need you again?
No.
You want to sit there? In my seat?
I'm okay.
I don't want you to stand up here the whole time.
You can sit down.
Oh, you can sit down or you sit there, sit there. I don't care what you do. Thank you, Nathan. Okay. So the prudent guide is now over here. Sorry, Nathan, you're thinking, why in the world did he even have me do that? And I really don't know. I didn't think that far enough ahead. It's funny that this wise scorner, when I say that in singular, it's a plural, never comes to me. Ever comes to me. What the statement is, I disagree with his stance on that subject. And here's what the response should be. Well, let's go talk to him right now. And then probably end it. People through the years have pulled aside my kids, other people's kids, my wife, and a few other wives about their disagreements, but never me nor the husbands. But they're wise in other areas, so they're not scorners, was my mistake. And boy, was I wrong. Why can't people just disagree? I double-checked with Ross before, because I needed to find somebody where I have a doctrinal difference with. And here I am violating everything I said, and so I'm going to talk about a doctrinal difference Ross and I have. You ready? I believe in the pre-trib rapture. He does not. And it may go further than that. I was going to use Dan, but I was going to have a picture of Dan up here with the mesh and everything we talked about, the cut-off finger gloves. That got passed around last week, and it's ended up being the kid from 50 First Dates. Yeah. And that got passed around and made it back over to me, and I was like, yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking about. But here's the thing, is I come up here, I don't teach pre-wrath. I don't teach, I teach. Now, I don't pick on anybody when we have differences. Do you ever feel like I'm picking on you? Oh, there we go. But he also doesn't go around the church saying to kids, hey, what do you think about the pastor's stance on the rapture? Because ultimately, there's some things that matter. If I'm right, then there's less to worry about. If he's right, we should be doing a little bit more for preparation. But however, which I believe some of us are doing for some sort of preparation anyways. But there's a difference there, and I get it. But why can't people just disagree and shut up about it? Now the thing is, I'm still going to teach pre-trib rapture from here, and but here's the thing. I'm also not going to go to Eddie or Aria and say, you know what? What do you think about your dad's thoughts on that? That's sneaky, it's wrong, and it's dishonest. He has never come to my kids and said, hey, your dad's teaching pre-trib rapture. What do you think about that? He isn't going around to other ladies. He's not going to ladies in the church and asking them the question, because you know what? He's not one of these. And that's what I didn't realize. Truth doesn't need company. Numbers prove the fool right in his own mind. This guy over here, the more that he can pull over to his position, the more right his position is. Truth requires no company. You come over here, and if it's just me, you know what? It's just me. We're okay with this. And so this person, even if they're on this side, cannot be honest enough with themselves because they have good intentions. They can't be honest enough themselves that they're pulling people. And what else are they doing? They're sowing discord among the brethren. The scorner sees a win by sowing discord. They may not see it, but they may have great intentions. Proverbs chapter 6, verses 16 through 19, is the 6 things that the Lord doth hate, yea, 7 are abomination unto him. Now look at verse 19. What's he talking about? The last one is that he that soweth discord among the brethren. And this has happened here. Interesting parallel with the scorners. Scorners go to children. Scorners go to women. Their children learn it and further spread it to other kids. None go to authority. Remember somebody else that did that? Who did Satan go to? Did he go to Adam? Went to Eve. I have heard about disagreements with me, but hardly ever from the person who disagrees. It always comes from somebody else throughout the years. And I thought, oh, you know what, no big deal. It's not a big difference, but why does it keep being brought up? Why does it keep on coming around about back to me? Why do I keep hearing about it? And then I have to act like, never heard anything. Then occasionally, you hear the kids in Sunday school that will make a comment and you're like, where'd you get that? And, but that's a subject for another time. We point to the foolish scorner and quote, he that soweth discord among the brethren. Don't we? But we don't recognize, or I didn't, just leave that there, please, that the scorner on this side doesn't get the same treatment. Because we see this person a little bit different, don't we? This person's not a fool. This person's wise. But over here, with disagreements and talking to other people. We've talked in our church about deconstruction. I'm all for your deconstructing. I'm all for you figuring out where you land. I'm also for you not throwing out the baby with the bathwater. Independent Baptist, there's a lot of stigma there. Or if you go to the U of O and learn about it, there's stigmatism surrounding it. I'm not sure if you saw that. There's stigmatism in Alabama. No, stignification. I can't remember what the word is. And I thought the irony there, you are a college athlete and you're using that word like that. Anyways, sorry, little side thing. I've been told that I might have astigmatism, but apparently there's a stigma, and then those things two combined, and that's the education somewhere. But we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? We have disagreements. We may come to change our position in something. That is perfectly okay. We've had a lot of stigma with independent Baptist or even forceful churches to where we learn to deconstruct. But when we learn to deconstruct, sometimes we need to realize there's people around us that can't handle the conversation that we want to have. But we always have that conversation down because we're not interested in learning. We're interested in pulling people with us. Have the conversation up so you can have better understanding. You know, somebody that disagrees with you is a person to have the conversation with. When I was trying to figure out day 4 on Genesis, I didn't go find somebody who believes in evolution. I talked to people who are rock-ribbed 6-day creationists, and I said, hey, I got to talk to you about day 4. Let's chit-chat and bounce a few things off each other. I didn't find the conversation down. You deserve better than for me to have a conversation down about something like that. I'm going to have the conversation up. I'm not going to go to your kids and ask you about day 4 of creation in order to figure out where I stand on it either, nor trying to pull them into what I teach. Because at the same time, what I teach about day 4 creation, you may disagree about day 4 creation, and then you all of a sudden, what you do is you go home and say, you know what? Hey, we respect him as a pastor. This is one area where we disagree. We're fine with that. Fine with, Ross on the way home said, he talked about pre-trib, rapture, and, hey, I disagree with it, but you know what? We're both okay with it. Now, if we had a disagreement on salvation or something like that, that's a different conversation. But, when the timing of the rapture is not something that we're going to argue with. What kind of music you're listening to on the way home is none of my business, nor am I going to talk to you or your kids about it. How you dress, how you act, what you're doing. Yes, behind the pulpit, you give me influence, and I have influence. I get it, but it doesn't go beyond here. All right. Here's the scorner language. I have peace. Praying about it, because once you're praying about it, it's kind of, and by the way, I know everybody says that. If you feel like if you said this and you feel like I'm picking on you right now, I'm not. Because we all should be praying about things. But we look throughout Scripture, something that's not mentioned, and we go against Scripture. Well, I'm praying about it, and I have peace about it. When you have peace, is you have peace when you stop fighting. You have peace when you start going with the flow instead of against the flow. There's something about the Christian life where against the flow seems to be where we're supposed to be and not with the flow. The last 2 years, there could have been a little bit more peace had we handled things differently. But you know what? We're going to have church, we're going to meet, and we're going to do it the way we think the Lord has us to do. It'd be a heck of a lot easier. Can I say, I shouldn't say heck from the pulpit, should I, Kathy? She's going to, so yeah, I'm sorry. It would be a heap easier. What did he say?
She's a cusser.
All right. Kathy's a cusser. Now we know.
I was a fool.
You see what he did there? See what he did? But the scorner will convince you of the easy path. The easier path to where you want to go. Satan did this to Jesus. Remember, that's what the 40 days in the wilderness were about. Hey, all the kingdoms of the world can be yours if you'll just kneel before me. Forget that crucifixion thing. Forget all that other stuff. Instead, if you'll just kneel before me, it's an easier path to what you are trying to get to. It's easy. There's a little bit more fun this way. And it's crazy how it works. You know what? I just love God. Don't we all? Yeah. Let's hit 5 points. We'll hit the house. There's some games today, although Joe cares nothing for the rest of them. The Bills won, and that's all that matters.
I do, actually.
No, what I find refreshing about that, Ben Roethlisberger, although I've still got a few issues with him, he came out and said, we don't have a chance. You know how refreshing it is for somebody to stand up and say that? Thank you. Well, we always believed. We were down 25-3, and we always believed. No, you didn't. Stop saying that. You thought you were going to lose, and you fought your way back. Just say it. Oh, yeah, I thought we were going to lose. You know how much I respect that? But no. Well, we always believed in each other. You can still believe in each other and still lose a game. when you go out in the field, half the people on the field have to lose. Anyways. Number one, realize the importance of your influence. I have up here a picture that some of you will be able to hear. Do y'all remember this one? You can hear that one, can't you, if you're old enough? See, Chris can. I learned by watching you, Dad. Where'd you learn to do drugs? I learned by watching you. Remember it? Children's eyes are always watching. Simple, like I said, is like a blank sheet of paper ready to be written on. So realize the importance of your influence. And see, I actually overthought my influence. I thought that my influence over here is like, hey, I said it once, I've taught you this, done done. And where other people, like Daddy always says, maybe I didn't do that enough. Because you hear people say that. All right, number two. Not only that, realize the importance of others' influence. Influence in marriage, dating, friendship, acquaintance. Don't hesitate to cut off bad influences. Movies, music. Pastor Matt made a statement this week, and I'm going to use it. Do I need to copyright it, you think? He's going to want some sort of reference here, so at the end of the sermon, we'll put a little C. No, we'll put quotation marks, and at the end, Matt Burkhead. But he said this, and it was right. Having our kids surrounded by friends is overrated. Actually, that's not what he said. Oh, okay. Do we surround our kids with prudent guides, or do we just surround them with people? Is it prudent guides or just people? I was looking at, if you have Facebook and saw it recently, you know that I've taken a few trips down memory lane lately. I don't know if back August that now, because now I'm getting my tapes digitized. Those are you're going to be seeing those pretty soon. Some of my wrestling matches in high school are in there. My house, before we bought it's in there. And I'm like, you know what? This is what I want for Christmas. I want this digitized. And so my kids are doing that for me. And, but you know what? As I go through that, I was hanging out with people in my 20s that I thought were super important to me. You know what? And I have a great memory, I think. And I'm like, Lisa, do you remember? I remember these people. I can't remember their name. It's interesting. We put so much stock in these friends who are going to be fleeting, but yet, you know what? Your parents are always going to be there for you. And it's like I've said to my kids, and I'll say it again. No matter what you do, no matter where you go, no matter I will always love you, and I will never use my presence as a weapon against you. I don't care how badly you disagree with me. I don't care what you do. If you try to hurt me, I won't use my presence as a weapon against you. Family is always there. And again, that's a general statement because you know what? That's true 90% of the time. But social media, here's what we're going to turn on social media, has given way too many scorners a voice. Way too many. People that before really couldn't even scrounge up two people to talk to, all of a sudden social media, you throw up a couple good thoughts and they're scorner ideas, and now millions of people can hear you. And our kids have turned it on. Number 3, the youth, or the simple one, this guy right here, that guy right there, the youth, bears some responsibility. Need you to be listening to this, you kids, teenagers, listen. The youth bears some responsibility. Proverbs 1:8, my son, hear the instruction of thy father, and forsake not the law of thy mother. I can tell you, and my mom used to sit right here in the church. She will tell you, I'm sure when I was younger, there's probably something but she will tell you, I never disobeyed her. And I will tell you, I never disobeyed my mom. Never. I wouldn't do it. There's some times where maybe I had disagreements. There are times I got in trouble. When I was talking about willfully, there was that time that I was out past. Remember when we all had to be home before the lights came on, on the street lights? That's what we did in Riddle. And so the street lights came on and I was still out playing. And I got spanked for it. And that's where I learned syllables. You will be back. And all right. And you know what? I'm like, I never want to do this again. How about Proverbs 1:10? My son, if sinners entice thee, consent thou not. Or if people sit next to you and want to talk, don't let them do it. Proverbs 1:15, my son, walk thou not in the way with them, refrain thy foot from their path. See, we have to teach them this. But kids, you have to own it. I can do this all I want over here. You can even blame me for the lack of doing this. But you know what? When I was growing up, I sought these people out. And if I haven't been good enough for you on this, it's still your responsibility to get over here. It's that or here. And you choose. Titus, before he goes to actually, all of our kids before they went to camp. But there's one particular time I looked at Titus and I said this. You have to realize that just because this is a Christian camp, there are kids you shouldn't be around, and I trust you to keep away from them. Do we say that to kids every year? Good. I've said this to my kids, and they're going to want to wash out their ears after they hear this. If I were you, and I wrote down this quote, so I made sure I said it right. As gross as it may seem, if I was you and I had any questions about marital intimacy, I'd ask me or your mom. Frankly, 30 years of success. Or you could talk to your peers who read a couple articles. Or you could watch porn and mess up your entire future. Or you could give yourself horrible ideas on what marital intimacy is. Or you could, talk to, people that actually have it figured out. But that's the last thing we do. It's the last thing we do. And why do we do that? But it's up to them. See, if it isn't enough, the biblical value of wisdom is when we go, I could read the verses, but we're not going to. Riches, longevity, honor, peace. If that's not enough to pull somebody over there, that enough is a prudent guide. Not wanting to be a fool should actually help us. If you don't want to be a fool, don't do foolish things. If you want to be wise, do wise things. Number 4, be careful to whom you give influence. Amos 3:3, can two walk together except they be agreed? If a kid is in the wrong crowd, chances are he is the wrong crowd. If a kid is in the right crowd, chances are he is the right crowd. But you know what he needs to do is watch out for, do I have a sign over here? Kids, you need to watch out for this guy. That person, the scorner that tried to pull you away, they're not going to be there when they pull you away. I think about the woman who used to live in the house right across over here. Her name was Mrs. Marsh. There was another woman. She would come over here. Chris, we used to walk to her door and help her across the street. There was another woman, Darlene Pormassel. Now, I don't mind mentioning the name because I still actually kind of hold a grudge about this. But our church wasn't even a year old at the time. 2 years, whatever the case was. But Darlene got mad about something and then started, well, you know what? I'm going to leave. I'm going to go back to the church way out somewhere else. And I'm going to start taking Mrs. Marsh with me. So here's the thing. Then all of a sudden you turn Mrs. Marsh against us, something she didn't disagree with. But all of a sudden now Mrs. Marsh wasn't walking over here anymore. You're pulling up in front of the church, getting Mrs. Marsh to go into your car, and then going way over there. But wait, you're going to go on vacation this summer like you do every summer. Who's going to pick up Mrs. Marsh now? No, Mrs. Marsh is going to be stuck in her house because now she can't come across the street. Otherwise she's disloyal to her friend who pulled her to the other place. Again, why can't we just disagree? And so Darlene goes away on vacation every summer like she did. Now Mrs. Marsh doesn't have a place to go to church during the summer. And it was within the next year I was walking through the hospital and saw her in her bed. And I was, obviously she's passed by now. But that's what scorners do. Yeah, all through the scorners of my life, where are they? Are they around to support me? Are they around to help me? No, they aren't. All right, number 5, last point. So give God the preeminent influence in your life. You want to be the right influence? Make sure your influences are good. 1 Peter 2:21, for even hereunto were ye called, because Christ also suffered for us, leaving us an example that we should follow his steps. Remember the bracelets and everything? What would Jesus do? WWJD, How about what's the Bible say? That's a little bit more accurate because if I stop and think, what would Jesus do in this situation? What that's doing, it's secular humanism. I'm trying to decide what I think God would do in this situation, and that's where we are now, to where now if you disagree with somebody, all of a sudden, well, that's not very Christ-like. Well, Jesus disagreed with people. It's gotten crazy. Watch this, Judd. In conclusion. Now I got Ron looking at the clock. Doing good. You haven't seen the conclusion. Proverbs 19:25 says this, smite a scorner and the simple will beware. Watch that. So smite, do we still have a scorner around here somewhere? It's like I have cue cards all over the place. Smite this guy, right? And then the simple sees it and says, you know what? I don't want anything to do with that. You know, that's how the basic training is set up. Those of us who have been through it. Smite this guy. This guy's going to listen and say, you know, I don't want that to happen. And you come, you know, but of course in the military, that you can do that. You can't do that in church. You can't walk up and smite a scorner. But, you know, you can still take care of the problem. Proverbs 19:29. Judgments are prepared for scorners and stripes for the back of fools. See, God has entrusted us. So we need to realize and use our influence. Your kid rides with me from soul winning in the future, I'll try to be a better, prudent guide. But, you know, and I realize it's my personality that's what I did. You know, I sought out the prudent guide. I didn't let fools have any of my time when I was growing up. I saw the end of all this. I saw what living this life can do, and I said, you know what? I am never going to do that. I've used the illustration before, and I don't mean to, you know, I don't claim that he was one. I'm just saying, you know, so, you know, when I was early on, what was it, 80, let's see, before 80, so third grade would have been 82, July 82. My brother was, he just got out of the Navy, and he was at a bar and stabbed. And I remember sitting at his funeral as a young boy saying, you know what? I'm never going to do this to my family. Ever. Ever. I sat across somebody recently and I said, you know what? I never made my mom cry. And if I ever did anything to make my mom cry, I guarantee you I would have fixed it. Because there's one person that will always be there. Isn't there? For me, I didn't know this at the time, but I was what kept my mom alive. And so then all of a sudden now we have that bond. But and you know, through all the rest of the time to where we were just always close. And at the same time, I felt that I owed my mom more than to disobey her. And by the way, if she was here today, she would back it up. The kid never disobeyed me. And, and so for me, that's why when it comes to being a prudent guide, I'm not a very good one. Because I'm standing over here, I'm like, you figured it out, I figured it out, you should too. Do. Quit having, respecting these guides and quit listening to scorners. Why would you do that? Why would you let somebody pull you over here, ruin your life, and then all of a sudden your life goes down in the dumps? You think this person's going to be one that's going to pick you up and help you out? No, they're going to cast you off to the side. Your parents will always be there. Your family will always be there. That scorner will not be. Scorners leave and they try to pull people with them. But when they pull them with them, they don't actually stick around. Realize and use your influence. Also, rely on the influence of others for good. Let's pray. Father, we thank you for our time this morning. Lord,